But here's why I named names. I didn't just name any old names. I wasn't calling out small business owners. I named corporations masquerading as people. Because vague generalizations about bro marketing, this isn't just about bro marketing people, aren't helping people. Tony Robbins, Marie Forleo, Dean Graziosi, Russell Brunson, Jenna Kutcher, Rachel Hollis, Sophia Amorosa, all of these people literally sell their things based on how they make between tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. That is the selling point. Yet then they want to hide behind just being people, just a girl next door, not a reflection of systemic exploitation. They're just like a relatable mom like you and me. Making mistakes, can we give them a second chance? I named names because when we talk about the harms of this industry in generalities, it doesn't help people. I don't want people to have to spend thousands and waste years and possibly run their businesses into the ground before they find the truth. Welcome to Marketing Muckraking, the show that asks not simply what brand culture can do for us, but what it's doing to us. With your host, creative director, and brand strategist gone wild, Rachel K. Albers, making fun of business and making business fun. This is the show for rebels, revolutionaries, and renegades who run businesses that burn the rulebook. If you're sick of business podcasts that have all the answers, well, I got nothing but questions. Let's go. Episode 8, Free School and Why the Cult of Online Business Made Me Burn It All Down. This episode is a special co-muckraking edition, which means I originally recorded it live on Instagram and now I'm bringing it over here. It's longer than our normal episodes, but there's so much juicy stuff packed in. I think you're going to have some fun. And if you're not following me on Instagram, what are you doing with your life? Get over there. You can co-muckrake with me one of these days. All right, now for the show. Good co-muckrake with ya. You want to know the real story about why the online marketing cult made me have a mental breakdown and where I am a year later? Well, this is my story and I'm finally ready to tell you. I do have notes to keep me on track today, so thank you for joining me. You might have heard this story from others. You might have heard parts of the story even from me, but I'm finally ready to tell you how it all went down. What happened with Free School? What happened with my public meltdown? And where am I going next? Last year, I had a very public meltdown. I burned out very badly on the cult of online marketing and online business. And I shared it here on Instagram in real time. I was doing an experiment. I was on my stories each and every day, which was part of an experiment I was doing called Free School. Yes, I branded my own breakdown. And I wanted to tell you what happened, the whole story, because as things heated up, I lost a lot of friends. I RKA'd my own reputation. And you know, many of the friends that I lost during that time, many of the people that I lost during that time were, you know, it was about my behavior, which was not entirely healthy. I will admit to that. But I think when you hear the story, you'll ask yourself, how could I have been, right? Of course, I had the experience that I did. I was going through hell. And it was not just about the cult of online marketing. It was not just about online business, although that was a really big part. So you might have heard some things about me. You might have heard other people tell my story, but I want to tell you my story. I also want to tell you about what this means about my work now and my book that I'm writing that some of you may have heard about in the early days of Free School or maybe afterwards. And how I am slowly pulling myself out of the darkness that I found myself in and rebuilding. Last year, I said, as Free School came to a head and became very dramatic, that you were watching a phoenix rising and rebuilding after burning down her life. And this is the next chapter of that story that I wanted to share with you. So, okay, here is some context for what went down. A few weeks into Free School, and I'll explain what Free School was in a minute, I had sent a letter to my entire family about the 40 years of abuse that my siblings, my mother, my stepmother, experienced at the hands of my father. And I wrote this whole big letter that was like, all right, people want to say they didn't know, it wasn't really happening, it didn't really go down. Now you know, right? So I wrote this letter to my whole family, and it was pretty much completely ignored. And everyone stopped speaking to me. And this will explain some of the fire that I brought into free school, which definitely there were personal and professional sides to this. And a few weeks later, after that happened, I finally gave myself permission to admit to myself that I didn't want to be married anymore. And this was especially hard because, speaking of branding, I had branded my marriage. You might not know this, but my husband and I did something called the 1-year wedding, where we got married every single day for a year. You could still go to the website. It's still up. We got married 365 times as part of another experiment in the concept that love is a daily choice. It's not something that you fall into like a hole. It's something that you actively choose. Love is a verb, right? So we got married every day for a year. We were all over the internet. We were all over international news. Jimmy Fallon made fun of us on the Tonight Show. We were on translated into different languages. It was wild. And mostly people were making fun of us. That's the truth. There was this one headline that's like, God save the soul of the woman who's making her husband marry her 365 times. So for years after that, I felt trapped in my own branded marriage. I was like, how can I divorce a man that I married 365 times, right? Saw this coming a mile away. So then one day, in the marketing industry, everyone's always telling you got to write a book, right? You want to get on stages, you want to position yourself as an expert, you got to write a book. But I always said, when my book shows up, I know I'm meant to write a book, but when my book shows up, I will know. It will come to my door and it'll announce itself to me. And then I know it'll be time to write it. And it was a few weeks into free school. I knew that I was getting a divorce, but the world didn't know it yet. And I was in the shower and I was thinking about Rachel Hollis and how she had kind of totally blindsided her audience when she announced her divorce with her book. Didn't see that coming. So I was in the shower and I'm like, oh my God, here it is. This is my book. I'm going to write a book called Saw This Coming a Mile Away, about how does a woman marry the wrong man 365 times? How did she get here? And how did she get to this place in her life and her business? And so and this is when shit heated up. So I announced that I was getting a divorce by posting a funny book cover, Saw This Coming a Mile Away, and announcing I'm getting a divorce and I'm writing a memoir. This is when things got real for me. Because at the very same time in free school, which I'll explain in a sec, I was doing a ton of industry whistleblowing and my Instagram stories, and people started coming out of the woodwork. At the point that I just announced that I was getting divorced, I started getting followers. These weren't my friends, although that came later, coming to me and saying that they believed that I was manic and delusional and not in my right mind and that I needed to be medicated. This was after I made a happy divorce announcement, okay? And I had friends at this point from my local women's networking group, none of whom I was close with, none of whom called me or texted me, calling the cops on me relentlessly to come to my house for wellness checks. And anybody who has any experience in the mental health system knows that unless it is truly a point where somebody is on the verge of jumping off a bridge, you don't call the cops on somebody who's going through a mental health crisis, right? But this is what they were doing to me. And it was extremely traumatic, just starting off the gate. I am saying that I'm claiming my power and I'm listening to my voice and I'm finally deciding to get this divorce. And I have people coming at me saying, no, you're manic and delusional. You need to be medicated here, And so for me, all of these things were connected. My family estrangement and abuse, my divorce, and the abuses in the online marketing industry. I saw them it was all a one connected whole. But what's interesting is when I talk to people who experienced free school, who were there in it, they see it through their own lens. For some people who were watching free school, they thought this was a family estrangement abuse story, a cycle breaking story, right? And that's how they experienced it. For other people, they thought this was a divorce story. And they were like, this is a woman who's going through a divorce. This is her, And for other people, it was the industry part. It was the whistleblowing, right? And I understand why that, because everybody's looking at anything through their own prism. And some people just thought I was insane, right? Some people literally thought they were just watching a woman have a breakdown on the internet. And I was having a breakdown, but I wasn't insane. That's the thing. Was I troubled and deeply traumatized? Absolutely. Was I delusional? Was I lying? Was I seeing things? Was I hearing voices? No, I was not. So I want to talk about here's how it started and what it turned into. Free school began not as a whistleblowing exercise. I did not start free school to name names. I started free school to say, you know what? All of these gatekeepers are keeping this info, like B School, locked behind a paywall. What would happen if I just showed up every day on my Instagram stories and taught everything that I know about online business for free? No paywall, no opt-in, no subscribe. It truly was an experiment. It was an experiment in creativity. It was an experiment in me finally allowing myself to just show up with my messy ideas and not feel like I had to package them within like the high production, awkward marketing. It was that. That is what started free school. It was like, it is a biz art experiment is what I called it. And as I got into it and I was discussing, the intersection of pop culture and online business, things started to reveal themselves to me. And I started to become more and more clear that my silence about certain names, certain harmful corporate entities that masquerade as people and personal brands, that actually wasn't helping people. And I also realized along the way that lots of people, many people in this industry are silenced by non-disparagement clauses and by legal trappings that keep them from actually naming the harmful names that people need to be protected from. I don't think you should have to go spend $10,000 with somebody to find out the truth. I was sharing the truth. So that's what it turned into, right? Was that whistleblowing. And then in the middle of this, I'm announcing my divorce and all these things are happening and I am showing up all day, every day live on Instagram. So that is how free school began. And it turned into this fiery burn it all down, which was not its original intention, but it's what it became. It's what it evolved into. And I'm not sorry about it. So here I am suddenly after all these years being in the online marketing space and creating amazing, listen, if you see my content is top notch. I know that. I'm not, and nobody's paying attention to me, right? And that ended up being a gift. The cool kids never invited me into the club. And that actually helped me be able to say what I did say because I'm not locked into any legal trappings, right? Suddenly though, everyone is watching my stories, right? Everyone who's anyone, all the blue checks is what I used to say. You name a name, they were watching at some point. They were watching free school. And I'm in the DMs with all these celebrity personal brands. I became friends with girl boss Sophia Amorosa at one point. We had some long voice chats. She was always putting us on incognito mode. What do you have to hide, Soph? And it made me realize as I started actually having relationships with some of these industry gatekeepers that these things that I had been noticing and I hadn't quite put the pieces together. I started to put the pieces together. Things that I didn't want to be true. I was giving so many of these folks, these relatable personal brands, the benefit of the doubt and realizing how our loneliness and desire for connection is weaponized and exploited by celebrity personal brands like Rachel Hollis and Jenna Kutcher, who build mega platforms based on their relatability, all to send us to an affiliate link for Tony Robbins' next grift, right? They want us to feel like friends, so we hold them less accountable, and so we buy their stuff, right? And I've been talking about that for the last few months in my content. So of course, all of this felt connected to my abuse history. Of course, all of this felt connected for me to my troubled marriage, because the tie that binds in all of these cases is that good girls don't do it this way. Good girls don't get angry. Good girls don't speak the truth. They whisper it. We like our victims weak and fragile so that we can rescue them and imagine that the problems aren't systemic, they're just individual. And the tie that binds is also that when you do speak the truth, like I did in my family or in my marriage or in the online business industry, you get punished, you get cut out, you get blacklisted, you get blocked, you get slandered, you get told that you're manic and delusional. This was true in my family, where almost no one was speaking to me and everyone decided to believe that what I shared about at this point for me, 36, but 40 if you include my mom, all my 40 years of abuse and the 8 people that he harmed, me, my mom, my stepmom, his 2 fiancés, and my 3 siblings, was a lie. And that it was my fault and I'm doing this for attention, I guess is what they think. Or they just think I'm nuts. That's what they're hiding behind now. This was also true here, though, in the online business industry, where the more that I spoke up, the more my friends ghosted me and blocked me, left, whispered to each other about how they thought that I was nuts. I saw conversations people were having about that. People did share screenshots with me, when in reality, we had all had these conversations behind closed doors, right? You name a person that decided to like hop off the RKA train. We've talked about all of the things that I talked about in free school, just not in public, right? And then I'm, being told that behind my back, all of my friends, because I'll be honest with you, I lived in Mexico. I lived outside of the country for almost 8 years, and I came back to the States and I didn't have a community here. Most of my friends were online business friends. They were friends that I built because all my time and energy was going into my business. So all of my friends were talking about me behind my back, saying that I was delusional and nuts and needed to essentially be locked away. Like, she's not whistleblowing, she needs help, right? Was I upset? Yeah, right? Was my mental health in a bad place? Yes, it was. Absolutely. I never denied that. Was I insane or manic or delusional? Did I need forcible police intervention? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I ended up taking a lot of free school off of the internet. One, because I'm going through divorce and I wanted to protect myself in that way because I was talking about my husband in my stories and I didn't want that to be used against me, right? So I took it down for that reason. But okay, here's the truth. Is that there came a point where I also believed that I was crazy. And it was last summer, after free school came to a head, that the cops had been called on me so many times. Like, it was bad. Like, people were, under the guise of helping me, under the guise of you need help, right? The cops are not trained to help people in a mental health situation, nor was I suicidal or threatening to hurt myself or others. They even called child services on me, which is how I ended up being forcibly hospitalized because someone else claimed that I was manic. And so they took me to the hospital to check if I was manic. And if you don't know what's going on with the mental health system right now, there are no beds. And I took 2 days for them to find a hospital where I could even be evaluated. I spent 2 days waiting to be evaluated by a doctor. And I kid you not, as soon as I saw one, literally within 15 minutes, this guy moved heaven and earth to get me out. Thank God for him. But during that time, when I was hospitalized because someone else claimed that I was manic, that my civil rights were violated. Like, thank God I went to law school and I know my rights. I didn't sign anything. I refused to sign anything, but they treated me like a dog. They strip searched me. They treated me like I was nuts. They did not treat me like a human being. I was not suicidal. I was taking good care of me and my daughter. And at the very same time, what was happening to me was traumatizing. Was I upset? Yes. Who wouldn't be? And I can see why folks could theorize about whether I was manic, especially because of the stigma that we have against mental health. Like, I was on the internet all day. I was talking a lot. Yeah, I had a lot to say. And I've been reviewing it and I said mostly good things. I mean, I was very high energy. I wasn't sleeping well. But I do have a long history of mental health treatment. And while I obviously struggle with anxiety and depression and the trauma of being raised in an abusive home. That is not my diagnosis. Bipolar is not my diagnosis. And I was not manic. Nor did I need to be hospitalized against my will because of that. So yet here's the thing, when that happened, when they did, I was, hospitalized and waiting to even be seen for 2 days, it felt like everyone who had said that I was crazy had won. It was extremely humiliating for that reason. Like, you didn't need, the folks that were on the train of Rachel's nuts certainly weren't paying attention to the nuance of the situation. So it did feel like that gave them ammunition. Like, oh, well, see, she got put away, so that must mean that she's really nuts, right? And I cannot explain to you the humiliation of that. And I have not even begun to heal from the trauma of that experience. And I know because I saw conversations people were having about me. One person said, I saw a screenshot of this. I loved Rachel, but she's not whistleblowing. She's not, she's unwell. First of all, you loved me until I was unwell, and then now I don't deserve love anymore. You don't love me anymore because I'm going through a hard time, because I'm estranged from my family, going through a divorce, and I'm whistleblowing, and none of my friends want to talk to me anymore, and everyone says I'm manic and I need to be hospitalized. Like, okay, bye, good fucking riddance to that fucking person. I will never argue that I wasn't well. Right? But because somebody's going through a mental health crisis does not mean they need to be forcibly hospitalized. And if you've ever been into a hospital, you will see that that is not a place where people go to heal. It is a stopgap. You put them in there essentially to keep them from hurting themselves and others. And that's all they can do for you. And medicate you. They wanted to put me on, they automatically prescribe everybody who goes in there before they even see a doctor with multiple things. One of them is Haldol, which is an antipsychotic that is like archaic and like, actually has caused people to do extremely, extremely scary things. So now here's the thing. Here's the nuance of the situation. In some cases, and during this time, because of all of the things that were happening around me, I did lash out at people. I was in a place where I was truly being attacked from all sides. I was alone. I had no support system. Remember, I'm not talking to my family. Nobody's talking to me and my family. I'm going through a divorce. I was a single mom for the very first time. My husband's gone, completely disappeared for 6 months, completely disappeared. And my friends weren't talking to me. No one was talking to me. The only people talking to me were you. Y'all were talking to me. Thank you so much. You got me through. And the folks coming out of the woodwork to insist that I was manic and delusional and needed to be stopped and put away. Those are the people I was talking to. So when all of this crashed down, like, yes, there were times where I lashed out at the wrong people because I didn't know who to trust. And I didn't behave in a way that is the person that I want to be. And that's the nuance of this. And I've made a lot of apologies and I've lost a lot of relationships for that reason, right? When all of this crashed down on me last summer, so that's like last summer is when it got really rough. When I say I was completely and utterly alone, I really mean it. There would be days and days where, remember, we're still in a pandemic at this point. I've got a little 3-year-old. I don't want to be taking her out into the world, possibly getting her sick. So there would be times where it would be days and days and days and days where I would not see another human being other than my daughter, my 3-year-old, right? So I came to a point last summer in this deep, deep, deep darkness where I started to believe that I deserved this, that I was being punished, that I was crazy, that I didn't deserve friends and family, that I had made a horrible mistake. Like, you know those nightmares, like when you have a nightmare and you wake up from the nightmare? You have a nightmare and then you wake up and you're like, oh, whew, well, at least that was a dream. Well, no, for me, I would wake up and I'd be like, oh shit, the nightmare is my life, right? And there, I said a lot at the time where I was like, I don't regret anything, but I did regret it. There was a point where I was like, I want to go back, take me back to my old life, right? Started to wonder if, yes, I was manic, maybe this is all my fault. Then this is how they get you. That is the literal definition and lived experience of gaslighting. I got to a point where the forces around me were insistent, that I didn't know my own mind, that I was saying one thing and I meant another, or that they knew me better than me. And yes, I got to a point in this process where I thought I was crazy, where I thought this was everyone was right. I was nuts. I want to put a caveat in here that earlier in free school, like as all the stuff was happening with like Jenna Kutcher, and you can find it in the archives, it's there. I had some accusations from folks that I was doing all of this for, just like my family accused me of standing up against my dad for his abuse. There was also accusations within free school that I was doing all of this for personal gain. And I want to set the record straight that could not be further from the truth. I took a massive, and when I say massive, I mean massive financial and personal hit from this. Like I said, I lost all my friends pretty much. I lost contracts, lots of clients, folks who referred to me, obviously. I made so little money last year compared to years before. I'm the sole breadwinner. I don't have any, my husband has never financially contributed. I've always been the sole breadwinner, made so little money last year. I couldn't even put Alice on marketplace insurance this year, because I do, marketplace insurance because I'm self-employed, because she was eligible for Medicaid. Like they put her on Medicaid because that's how little money I made last year, right? And the only reason that I got through, people ask me, how did I afford it? And I did have the privilege of having some money in the bank. I took my tax money, the money I had set aside to pay my taxes, and I lived on that. Which wasn't very much, but that's what I lived on. And now I have a huge now I got a problem with the government, right? Now I got to work that out with the IRS. But listen, what else was I going to do? So I maxed out my credit cards, which weren't very much either. And I spent my tax money. And if I did this for my agenda, let me just be clear that I completely failed. I lost friends, financial stability. I lost my family. My reputation was damaged, massively damaged. And when it all crashed down, I did lose my ability. I couldn't function as a business owner. Even if I had the clients to work with, I couldn't work. And the only thing I could do was literally take care of me and my daughter, my 3-year-old. And that is what I did, is I just took care of my child. And that's all that I could do. And it kind of in a way felt like a late maternity leave, because some of you might know I didn't take a maternity leave. I was so deep in hustle culture. And yes, like I said, I was a sole breadwinner, and I couldn't take a step away from my business, in order to take time off to be with my child. So then I'm now a new single mom. Roberto has disappeared, and I've got this time with my daughter. So that was a weird, to say, silver lining. It was a dark time, but I was able to spend a lot of time with my child that I had not been able to spend before, because I've been working all the time. So when we're in this dark place last summer, I'll tell you what, I pretty much had nothing else to do but to drink. That is where I was at. I was drinking at night. I would wake up in the morning and I would basically say, how long until I can acceptably have a glass of wine, right? And I did get to a point where I was like, I know that the answers are not at the bottom of a bottle. Like, I know that. It's not going to make me better. And I read this book called Drunk Mom. It's a really deeply disturbing memoir about a woman deep in the depths of alcoholism. And I saw that as my future. I'm like, if I don't do something about how I'm using alcohol to cope, I will end up in a place like that. And so here's what I started to do. And here's where the story just starts to turn around a little bit. It's been a dark, dark road. I started to just wake up as soon as the sun hit at the butt crack of dawn. I would load up Alice into her stroller. I would load up snacks for the day, and I would just start walking. We would go on walks. We went to every park, and we walked for sometimes 7-8 hours at a time. And I had diapers and food, and she could sleep in her stroller. We walked to parks. We went to every park in the area. And during my walks, I would listen to audiobooks on the history of branding and advertising. Because here's where I was at. I had branded myself so effectively, I became somebody else. I became a product. And I started in recent years to feel I was starting to feel very uncomfortable, because I was people would tell me things like, Rachel, you're such a happy ray of sunshine who always puts a positive spin on everything. And that's what I love about you. You're just so positive. You're just a little sunshine girl. And I was like, shit, this person doesn't know me at all. Oh, damn. I've backed myself into a corner with this brand where everyone thinks I'm just a happy clown, where I'm just marketing is awkward, but it'll be okay, And with my marriage, my branded marriage, people were like, oh my God, you and Roberto are couple goals. I want to be just like you. You guys are so in love. And as you know, I that was a lie. And I was like, holy crap, I created a commodified version of myself that wasn't really me. And I backed myself into a branded corner. And when I burned it all down, I didn't know who I was anymore. I truly had lost myself. And so I started looking at the history of branding. And that was just this tiny pinprick of light in the darkest place I've ever been in. There was no light at the end of that tunnel. And then there was just this tiny little prick. And that was this research that I was doing. And the funny thing about brands during this time that I will say is, as you know, I was completely alone. My family's cut me off. I don't have my friends. My Roberto has disappeared. I was alone with a 3-year-old for months at a time. And I would get in the car with Alice and drive, and I would cry because I had nowhere to go. I would just drive around. No one was waiting for me. I had nobody wanted to be with me, right? And so you know what I would do? Is I would go to Target or Walmart and walk the aisles with Alice, and it felt soothing to me. It felt like I was spending time with family and friends because the logos that I had grown up with comforted me. The Cheez-Its, the Coca-Cola, the Tyco, the Barbie, it comforted me. I went to Walmart to spend time with my friends and family who were brands, right? And this research that I started doing ended up showing me the book that I really needed to write first. Yes, there is a part of my story in this book, but this book is not a straight up memoir. It is one part history. It is one part cultural criticism with a little splash of RKA narrative in there. My research has shown me that what happened to me is a feature, not a glitch. Consumer culture historically was engineered to get us to find our worth and value in what we buy, in what we own, in what we're buying next, in the brands we wear, the cars in our driveway, the decorations in our home, the clothes that we put on. Brands were designed to feel like friends, members of the family, to give us a sense of community and belonging and identity so that we keep buying from them. The earliest days of consumer capitalism, because we weren't always a capitalist, we weren't always a money economy in the United States. We were an agrarian handicraft economy. There was a lot of bartering. There was other forms of currency that we used. The early days of consumer capitalism were designed to turn us inwards toward ourselves, how we can buy our way to being better people, and away from community and what industrialization was doing to the world and its people. That was a specific design. It was engineered. And you'll find the historical roots of that in a lot of the content that I've been creating in recent months. It is a feature, not a glitch. So now it is the 1-year anniversary of free school. In a couple of weeks, it'll be the anniversary of when, I was accused of being manic and had to be hospitalized until a doctor could say, rule it out, which he did immediately, right? And I have started letting myself rewatch everything that happened again. Because as I said, I got to a point where I gaslit myself. I thought I was crazy. And so I was embarrassed by the free school content, and I didn't watch it, and I took it down and I hid it. And I have been rewatching this stuff from a year ago. I just watched a live that I did last year, right around this time. This was right after the Rachel Hollis thing went viral, and I was going viral with it. Like, all the blue checks were watching me. And I'm watching this thing expecting, like, cringing, expecting to see this like totally insane woman who is out of her mind. And finding that the only insane thing was how long it took me to realize what was really going on here. Now, was I in a bad place emotionally? Yes. Did I always express myself in a healthy way? No. There are conversations I had during that time where I did not treat people, individual people, the way that as the person that I want to be. And I have sent a lot of apology letters, and those folks did not deserve my anger. And yet, I also have to forgive myself and be gentle with myself. I didn't act like the woman that I want to be. And I was also doing my best. That is the truth. I did not do what I did to be cruel. My family has accused me of like attacking the family because I'm talking about my father's 40 years of abuse history. I was hurting. I was overwhelmed, and I was actively being attacked, and people were weaponizing the police against me. And I was honestly terrified, truly terrified. The fact that my neighbors and the local people around me were calling the cops on me incessantly, I guess, put me into a paranoid place. I did not know who to trust. I only knew how to trust me. So when folks would come out of the woodwork and tell me, you're manic, you need to be medicated, you're delusional, have you thought about getting therapy? I was like, I just never thought about it. Of course. I've been in therapy since I was 8 years old. It was court mandated because my dad abused me. Like, when that happened, I would be like, stop right there. Go no further. You are hurting me. And I was angry. And that, affected the people who were reaching out with love. And some of them weren't reaching out with love, but some of them were, and I didn't handle it well, right? And that's also how I lost friendships. It wasn't all just like, it's very nuanced in that way. Because here's the thing though, while most of these people were really good intentioned, these folks were deciding for me what the problem really was. They were hearing my words and deciding that Rachel doesn't know her own mind. Rachel, no, the problem isn't that you have a good reason to be upset. The problem is that you're manic. The problem isn't your father's abuse. The problem is that you're insane, right? Like, you just need to be put away somewhere, just locked away, like where we can't deal with your bullshit. And that there is a right way, a good girl way to express your pain and to call things out, and that this ain't it. No, we don't do this. We don't name names. We don't go on Instagram all day, every day. We don't do it. In that vein, I will say, I find it interesting that Tyler J. McCall did a podcast with Maggie Patterson a few weeks ago on the dark side of online business. And they did it the good girl, the live, laugh, love culture way. No names, just vague generalizations. A friend sent me a post last week and informed me about this. I didn't see it go down live, that Tyler apparently made a post recently where he referenced a high ticket coach who had harmed him and his mental health and the work that he had to do to untangle himself from that. What I'm told about in the comments is that people wanted to know who. They wanted to protect themselves. And Tyler responded that he doesn't owe anyone anything and to Google parasocial relationships. That was his response. But I'll tell you why I disagree. When you are a leader who has led thousands of people to purchase programs specifically, like this is your job is to teach people about online business and invest lots of money into programs, and your emotional investment in these programs, you're now calling out as harmful and saying that it harmed you so much you spent a year plus in therapy to recover, but you don't want to tell us who it was. I do think that there is a responsibility to protect other people from harm. And I think that this is a form of trying to leverage, to get sympathy without actually wanting true accountability. And hey, you know what? If you disagree with me, a lot of people agree with Tyler's approach and not mine. That's why what happened to me did, right? Tyler J. McCall was a linchpin for me personally because he also pinned me as crazy and abusive in my desire to name names. But here's why I named names. I didn't just name any old names. I wasn't calling out small business owners. I named corporations masquerading as people. Because vague generalizations about bro marketing, this isn't just about bro marketing people, aren't helping people. Tony Robbins, Marie Forleo, Dean Graziosi, Russell Brunson, Jenna Kutcher, Rachel Hollis, Sophia Amorosa, all of these people literally sell their things based on how they make between tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. That I just went on the business class sales page yesterday for Sophia's, and her selling point is that she has earned she's built businesses with hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. That's why you should trust her. That is the selling point. Yet then they want to hide behind just being people, just a girl next door, not a reflection of systemic exploitation. They're just like a relatable mom like you and me, making mistakes. Can we give them a second chance? I named names because when we talk about the harms of this industry in generalities, it doesn't help people. I don't want people to have to spend thousands and waste years and possibly run their businesses into the ground before they find the truth. My final problem with this approach of folks like Tyler J. McCall is that he's still selling the capitalist dream, which is ultimately, this is the crux of the problems. It's not about these individuals just, getting rid of a few bad apples, partnering with this concept that everyone should be a millionaire when that statement is actually impossible within capitalism. It is impossible. Why advocate for a system that relies on the exploitation of billions of people to thrive? These people are peddling a mythology that if you can just become a millionaire, you can solve the world's problems, that the solution is making more money the right way. That is more of the same. An ethical or conscious approach to business that refuses to acknowledge the harms of capitalism is a wolf in sheep's clothing. And this is ultimately what I'm writing my book about. It is a lot of things. It's about a lot of things, and you'll have to wait a bit longer to hear a little bit more. But this book honestly saved my life. It helped me ungaslight myself. It helped me see that my problems that I experience are part of a much larger systemic issue. It helped me see that my branded self was something engineered by consumer capitalism. I thought all of these years that I was doing the right thing because I was helping small business owners get free from the man's clutches. But it's just not that simple. We can't buy our way to a better world. We can't make millions and solve the world's problems. We must see our businesses today as an interim measure, while the greater goal is building consciousness and investing in the collective so that we can fashion new non-capitalist solutions. Yes, I believe that we all should be able to live meaningful, enriching lives now. So this is not about putting yourself intentionally in poverty. That helps nobody. People need to make money. They still have to be capitalists. I'm a anti-capitalist capitalist. I have to work within capitalism. There is no opting out. They need to be able to rest, to enjoy their lives, to be with their families, to do things that fill them up their soul. But there is an asterisk on that. Making money is not the end goal. The end goal is creating a system where all needs can be provided for. And capitalism ain't it. Now, I don't have the answer. I've said that many times again. That's what I say on my show, Marketing Muckraking. I have a lot more questions though. And I think before I try to suggest that I have some shiny solution, like, oh, just do this, not that. Just here's the ethical way to do it. Like, I need to keep plumbing the depths of the problem, as Anand Giridharadas says in Winners Take All. So the questions, that's my book. That's my work today. Yes, I listen, somebody said to me the other day, like, if you think that this, industry is immoral, time to find another job. I'm like, well, that's not an economic reality for most people. Almost every industry in the world is exploitative and harmful because of capitalism. So once you realize that your industry is bullshit, you just find another job. What? I can't do that. I can't do that. Like, literally. And yes, so I do work with brands one-on-one who want to figure out how to build businesses more ethically, but I do this one-on-one. I do not have a scaled solution for this. I don't have a solution I can bring to every single business owner and say, do this, not that. I can't say like the 5 ways to be more ethical in your business. And anytime you see somebody that's like, you can be ethical and still super rich, it's like, that's the wrong selling point. More of the same. But my true passion is muckraking, which you can probably tell. That's my side hustle, if you will, and what you'll mostly find in this space. Because it's important. Because I don't want someone else thinking they're crazy because of the emotional toll this takes on their lives. Because people deserve the truth, not the sanitized version of the dark side of online business that is actually more of the same. If you did want to support my work, you can go to buymearobe.com. That's one way you can do it, but you don't have to do that. You can support my work by sharing it, by commenting. Even more importantly, by taking these topics to talk about them with your friends. Talk about it with your family. Do your own research. I share a lot of my sources. Go read some of the books that I've been reading. Do your own muckraking. Put it on the record, as I often said during free school. Because my work is really a contribution to our work. It is not just about me. It is about us. And I literally cannot do this alone. The world needs more muckrakers. Will you join me? Thank you for being here today. I'm going to sign off. If you want more marketing muckraking and brand strategy gone wild, I invite you to subscribe to this show, and if you enjoyed it, leave me a review. That really helps me out. If you hated it, please send it to your enemies. They sound like good people. You can go to rachelkalbers.com/subscribe to get these updates in your inbox. And because this show is self-sponsored, if you wanted to support my work, you can go to buymearobe.com. That's where the magic happens. In the meantime, remember, it's not the age of the niche, it's the age of the wild card bitch. See you on the internet.